Hey, it's Derek with Gold and Black Radio, and I just came from my local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. The most festive gear of the year is back, guys, at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Don't miss the limited edition Magellan Outdoor Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Get exclusive 2025 gear and gifts for all your holiday parties, fun family photos, and Christmas morning traditions. Check out the entire collection, from matching PJs and holiday print fishing shirts and dresses to exclusive new Mossy Oak Snowdrift camo styles and more. Shop in-store or at academy.com. Need it fast? Get same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Let your holiday fun begin with Magellan Outdoors Christmas Market Collection only at Academy.
Welcome into another edition of Gold and Black Radio, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. Well, Purdue didn't make it a four-quarter game against Ohio State like they had done the previous week against Michigan, but they did lead after one quarter, which, considering where Ohio State was, maybe that was a victory in its own right. It ended up being a 34-10 loss, unfortunately, for the Boilermakers, as that long Big Ten Power 4 losing skid continues. Only 2 weeks left in the 2025 season, and Purdue will take their last road trip of the year all the way out to Seattle to new Big Ten compatriot Washington as they take on the Huskies coming off a loss to Wisconsin. We'll talk Boilers and Huskies with Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison in just a few moments. But first, a big thank you to our tremendous Gold and Black sponsors that make this show possible, including Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler Up, East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis, is perfect for relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort, ready for a winter getaway? Discover the stillness and beauty of Sand Valley. Our stunning 12,000-acre landscape is the perfect place to explore, whether you're cross-country skiing, enjoying a quiet walk, or just relaxing by the fire. With thoughtfully designed accommodations and nourishing dining, Sand Valley is a place to reconnect with yourself and those you love. Find your winter retreat at sandvalley.com. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. They're never playing out the string, despite losing skids and all that. It's goldandblack.com football writers Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison, who join us now on this Tuesday edition of Gold and Black Radio. And Tom, I guess we can kind of start right there. Washington, when you talk about this game against Ohio State and just kind of where Purdue is, last season, you go back and look, and I understand that last season is a very low bar, but there were several times where Purdue not only got outclassed, but they got embarrassed. At least with this season, and I know that I'm very much reaching for a positive here, it does appear so far that Purdue, at the very least, while they have been outclassed at times, and I know that Northwestern game wasn't as close as what the final 19-0 score indicated, they've not been embarrassed, like downright embarrassed, like that. Oregon, IU, Notre Dame, so many of those games last year, it happened that way. I do think Purdue maybe deserves some kudos, and Barry Odom and his staff deserve some kudos for keeping them fighting until the very end, even though they are indeed playing out the string here.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and hand out try-hard trophies, Derek. How about that? Yeah.
I need one because I'm trying hard with that question, right?
Hey, man, I commend you, man. You are a pro's pro, what you do, my friend. Yeah, last year, boy, the resume you ran down there, a lot of ugliness. For me, the one you left out was the game at Wisconsin, too. Just an utter abomination up there in Madison, too. I think it was like 52-6. It was over really early. And you're right. That, for the most part, that has not been the case in 2025, save for maybe the Northwestern game to a degree, right? The no-show there. But by and large, against a very, very rigorous and daunting schedule, who's who of college football blue bloods and powers, Purdue's at least stood in there toe-to-toe like I like my data references of Chuck Wepner and Randall Tex Cobb and taking the blows and not feigned at all and kept their chin there. So that is something, right? That was a measure we wanted to see this year if the fight was going to continue. And as you guys know, when life's really kicking you and hitting you, it's hard to keep getting up and moving forward and plodding forward, but Purdue certainly has, right? So that's to the credit of the players and the coaches both, guys. The work's not done yet. Still more heavy lifting left this Saturday, of course, and that finale against Indiana is going to be a doozy too. But yeah, the effort's certainly been there, Derek, despite the results being so dreary.
Yeah, and Dub, we can get into it. I mean, there were things that Purdue did passable, okay. There were other things other areas that they struggled where we knew that they'd struggled. But to me, just kind of watching that game on Saturday, it's one of those things where, and this is rare that this is the case, but if you would put that Purdue team against that Ohio State team 100 times, I'm pretty sure Ohio State would win all 100. So I'm just honestly having trouble. It's not like the NFL, right? Where you saw what happened with the Dolphins and Bills on Sunday, where every once in a while, the teams, even from the worst team to the best team, there's a little bit of a gap. We all know the chasm that exists right now between Purdue and Ohio State. I just have trouble giving them too much criticism for losing.
Yeah, I think everyone knew what the deal was going into that game, and Ohio State's not going to roll over. Purdue is going to have to go out there and beat them. And play the game of a lifetime to actually have a shot, right? As we've seen time and time again this season, Purdue just hasn't been able to do that. So, I think you're going to have these in college football, especially where Purdue is trending as a program. I think just kind of middling and not making too much progress. I know we've kind of talked about it throughout the year. The fashion in which they've lost it has been better and more appealing, I guess. But, where Purdue is now, I don't think you're going to be able to compete with a team like Ohio State, who looks poised for another national championship run. I think that's kind of what you chalk it up to. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on what we saw on Saturday. Just if you're going into it with reasonable expectations, I think Saturday was pretty good, all things considered. I think Ohio State probably could have ran up that score a lot more than they actually did.
Tommy's only thrown one interception during this span, and I know we were kind of getting after him for it earlier in the season, but Ryan Brown has just over 100 passing yards per game over the last three.
Yeah.
And really, outside of some garbage time numbers at Northwestern by Singleton, Purdue really hasn't thrown the ball effectively in over a month. Even though we've seen some signs of life from the running game. What do you think that the main issue has been with that, outside of obviously, Ohio State and Michigan, some of these defenses that they've faced here in that sample?
One, I've kind of wondered about the overall health of Ryan Brown. That's crossed my mind with that left. I know it's a non-throwing shoulder, but if that's been impactful at all, maybe in his just overall ability to operate, if you will, from the pocket and do what he does. And then I think the receiving core has been an issue. Obviously, we've gone over that, it seems like a million times, right? The drops. So I think that's been at the heart of some of the issues for maybe the lack of production in particular, being maybe so acute of late. I can't speak to that. But again, the drop in the passing efficiency and overall numbers is very alarming, Derek. But again, I think the receivers and the tight end spot's been pretty much a black hole all year. Rico Walker will flash every 2 or 3 games like he did Saturday with a 30-yard catch. But by and large, that's not a position that's going to give you any juice from a catching the ball standpoint, too. So, yeah, and I think, as much criticism as the line's taken, I don't think they gave up a sack on Saturday. And they've been at least okay when it comes to protecting Ryan Brown. So I just think it's a collection of things maybe that's conspired here to really make that passing game be so abysmal. But again, a lot of work to do there. I don't think Ryan Brown is the problem. I think they got to try to help him by maybe improving the cast of characters around him.
Barry Odom has remained steadfast in his belief that this thing is going to turn, even though obviously we're going to have to wait till next fall for that to happen. Dub, but has he been the right guy for this, in the sense that simply because I'm just worried that a first-time coach would have been maybe swallowed up in the wake of this by now? I mean, kind of like, not to make another comparison to last year, but kind of like what we saw with Walters and his staff.
Yeah, I think Barry Odom's kind of equipped for this. I don't think he's had a losing streak of this magnitude in his career, but he's had several 4, 5, 6 game losing streaks in his career. Now, I think some people might look at that and say, well, that doesn't really give you much optimism for the future. But, you got to think that he took those lessons he learned at Missouri, translated it to UNLV, and now he's learning more lessons, right? In his first year at Purdue. And, he's always said that it wasn't going to be easy. And I think we all knew that. But I still think he's the right guy for the job. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt in year one, adding 83 new guys to a roster. That's going to be hard for just about any coach to do. So I don't really have any reservations in terms of, whether Barry Odom's the right guy for the job at this point. I think you're not even a year in, so you got to give him a little leeway. Now, this upcoming portal period is going to be big for Purdue. I think Purdue's really got to hit the portal hard and potentially try to be more targeted with their transfer portal targets and kind of filling those needs, as opposed to just kind of filling out a roster, which I feel like that was a hand that was forced onto them last year. So this offseason is going to be really big for them, and a 2026 schedule that's still going to be difficult, but one that Barry Odom's going to have to take advantage of and start showing that progress.
Tom, Washington's good, certainly not to the level of Ohio State or Indiana, as evident by their 10-point effort against previously comatose Wisconsin this past weekend. That said, those long trips, like what they did to Madison, that we've seen what that's done to the former Pac-12 teams, right? That's not going to be the case coming up on Saturday, right? It's Purdue, the one that is going out there. So I think leveling the playing field, you kind of lose that advantage. But unlike what I said about, 100 out of 100 times I think Ohio State can win, can Purdue make this a game and potentially put themselves in a position, if everything goes right, to have a chance for that breakthrough victory? I know that I'm grasping here.
No, real quick, too, just to circle back to Dub and the building of the roster. We reported today that Purdue's hired a key individual from UCLA, Butler Benton, whose boots are already on the ground in West Lafayette. He was the GM at UCLA. He's going to play a real big key role in building this roster, who to get out of the portal and who to retain. So that's another piece to the front office puzzle that Purdue's added. It's a model in the front office personnel wise that I believe they want to resemble like an NFL team model. So they're continuing to evolve there, and hopefully that will result in even better players being pulled out of the portal. Now, Derek, to your point, going out to Seattle, I asked Barry, first of all, about the travel. Because I know Jeff Brom. I was with them when they went to Nevada. They went out early. It was a couple years ago. No, it was last year, Derek. Went to Corvallis. Yeah. And I believe they went out early to Corvallis, too. And they're not going out early to Seattle. Barry thought with the time of the game, 7 p.m. local time here, and they think they're going to be able to get all the work in they want to here, that they're going to bus to Indianapolis on Friday and leave from Indianapolis and get out there. And also help, Barry said, to buy the next week. So they're going to get back really early after the game, like 5 a.m., he said. But the fact they'll have a game next week helps them, too. So now on the field, can they win this game? I guess I'm finally getting your question right. Yeah, I mean, why not? We saw, like you said, a comatose effort from the Huskies last week in Madison. They got beat in that dreary weather in Madison by a team that was winless in the Big Ten. Still a very good quarterback, the best running quarterback in the Big Ten, maybe. And we've gotten 13 minutes deep into this thing. We haven't said Ryan Walters' name one time. Mm-hmm. That's the fun storyline, the undercurrent of this whole trip. I asked Barry several questions today about that, and of course, he's a buddy. They're buddies, I asked, is it weird taking the job of your old friend? And Ryan's going to be jacked up, and of course, Barry Odom's brother's on the Washington staff too. Brian Odom, the youngest Odom. So, because there's a lot of fun storylines there. Again, it's still a very good Husky team, Derek. A Husky team that's 6-3 was ranked recently as well, 24th, I believe. And I think it's a team that you would have a better chance to maybe shock than the Ohio States of the world. So who knows? Again, Purdue's got nothing to worry about here, and just go out there, play loose and free, and maybe they can catch lightning in the bottle.
Dub, we talked about it on Friday's show, a big recruiting weekend last weekend where they had a lot of people on campus for that game against Ohio State. How did the recruits that you talked to take in the weekend?
I think I kind of talked about it on here before, just the staff and their willingness to build these relationships with these recruits, I think has kind of gone a long way. So all the recruits I've talked to had a great time, despite Purdue's loss. And I think it's important for guys to be able to get on campus and see how coaches interact and be able to see coaches face to face, because you're not really getting that throughout the year. Purdue's got 2 bye weeks in coaches can get out on the road and recruit during that time. But a lot of that time is meant for commitments and guys that are very high priority. So, I talked to several guys and they were all talking. They all spoke glowingly of Barry Odom and staff and kind of how they were welcomed and treated. So there might be some news dropping in the next day or two. Just want to throw that out there. So stay tuned to goldandblack.com coming out of this big recruiting weekend.
We're back on Friday for another edition of Gold and Black Radio to get you set for Saturday's matchup against Washington and Seattle. As everybody knows, of course, Washington versus Purdue is a rematch of the epic 2002 Sun Bowl I'm just kidding. Of course, the Rose Bowl matchup, right? 25 years later against Seattle. But in the meantime, the absolute best Purdue coverage can be found right here at goldandblack.com and on social media. So follow Tom and Dub for all the latest when it comes to the Boilers. Guys, thanks so much, and we will talk to you again coming up here on Friday.
Take care, folks. Be good.
It's Tom Dienart and Dub Jellison joining us here on Gold and Black Radio. Before we get to Brian Newbert to talk a little football, let's go ahead and hear from our friends at BetMGM.
Hey, college football fans, it's time to lock in on those Saturday showdowns with BetMGM. Whether you're betting the underdog or riding with the favorite, take your excitement to the next level with a college football odds boost token. Log into your BetMGM account to receive your token. Then place a bet on any college football matchup with your activated token. If your boosted bet hits, you'll score a bigger payout. Claim your odds boost token and be sure to activate it before placing your bet. The game is about to kick off, so feel the rush and own the moment. BetMGM, make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel.
And as you can probably tell by the background, it is time to switch from football on to men's basketball. The Boilermakers have their first really big test of the season coming up Thursday as they go into the belly of the beast in Tuscaloosa to play the return game against an Alabama team that they beat early last season at Mackey Arena, who's coming off a very impressive win. They just went to the Garden and hung 103 points up on St. John's. Joining us now is a guy that is no stranger to the Garden because he grew up near there. He is a basketball knower and goldandblack.com columnist. He's Brian Newbert. You ever go to a St. John's? I don't think I ever went to a St. John's game at the Garden. I went to like Knicks games at the Garden and things like that, but I don't think I ever saw the Johnnies play there.
Yeah, no, I never went to a St. John's game. I went to a couple of Knicks games when I was a kid. I grew up back in the Lou Carnesecca days. I could have gone to see Brandon Hamilton and Felipe Lopez play. I just never did. That would have been fun.
Yeah, see, I was more like the right after Felipe Lopez was certainly me, but like the LeVar Postel, like Ron Artest, the last good St. John's teams of the 20th century, basically, and then
that would have been Jarvis.
Terrible. Yeah, they were terrible for a long time after that, really until recently. But really impressive win for Alabama. We'll talk about the Tide here in just a little bit, but let's talk about Purdue first, Brian. Close shave Friday against Oakland, at least from a final score standpoint. It was a game that remained tight really until the final couple of minutes, and it may have cost Purdue their number one spot in the polls. I don't really care. It's November. So what? I think you've done your best to reel folks in here, but are there any areas that legitimately cause you concern? Maybe some of the areas that we even talked about in the preseason that you identified, besides just the fact that, hey, Trey Kaufman-Renn isn't playing.
Well, I think Purdue has to get its other All-American back. Yeah, that's a big part of this. As I wrote in my thing today, is Purdue shouldn't need Trey Kaufman-Renn to beat Evansville and Oakland, and they didn't. They beat those teams. But if you're expecting the number one team in the country to just be clicking on all cylinders to the point where you can blow somebody out by 50 points, that's a big piece missing. Style points don't matter. Every season there's a process involved at the beginning. Purdue is well equipped to hit the ground running, and they got to rebound, they got to defend, and I think Trey Kaufman-Renn fixes a lot of the flaws that you saw through these first couple of competitions when he comes back. But I think the difference between Michigan scoring 121 points on Oakland and Purdue only scoring 87, and I don't think Purdue was ever in jeopardy of losing that game, contrary to the panic attacks that people were having over the score at various points in the game. But the difference between what Michigan did to Oakland and what Purdue did to Oakland or didn't do to Oakland was Michigan made its threes, and Purdue had a million open threes to open the game. Purdue's a great shooting team. You give them those shots every game, they're going to score 100 points a lot. They just didn't make them. And when you weren't making them, you needed Trakoff and Ren to throw the ball inside too. To Purdue's credit, they figured it out. They made their shots late. Kept it close by having a little troubling spell of turnovers there that kind of allowed Oakland to hang around longer than it should have. That, if anything's troubling about this, that was it. It wasn't the rebounding. It wasn't the perimeter defense. Those were issues that can get better. It was the spell there where I think they turned it over like 3 or 4 times in the span of a few minutes. Oakland got like 8 points straight off of some of those turnovers. That's been the poison pill for Purdue when they've struggled the last 5 years, is those little lightheaded spells there where they just start throwing the ball away, giving offense to the opponent and allowing them to hang around when they might not otherwise hang around. That was the troubling part of the Oakland game, as much as anything, if you ask me. The rebounding, the perimeter defense, that's the sort of stuff that will get better. I'm sure that, being pushed by Oakland insofar as Purdue was pushed, I think, can be a good thing for them. They shouldn't need lessons at this stage of their collective careers, but it is to have to sweat a little bit, might get the point across here. And there might be a component to this too, and this probably isn't ideal, but maybe Purdue is playing with its food a little bit here, and maybe better competition brings out a higher competitive gear for them. I don't know, but I think the rebounding will get better when Trakoff Moren shows up and everybody realizes that 5 guys have to have 5 bodies accounted for. And I think Purdue gets in a groove defensively here before long. And I think people are losing their minds for no real good reason.
The competitive gear has certainly been there for Oscar Clough so far. I know we're only talking about 2 games, but how big of a difference has he already made? And is it more stark and obvious considering that Purdue's front line was a little bit of a black hole last season outside of TKR?
Yeah, he's everything they need. He may not look like $1 million all the time. He's not going to jump over anybody. He's not going to outrun anybody. Daniel Jacobson's not going to outmuscle anyone at this point of his career, perhaps any point in his career. But what you're getting from a productivity standpoint from those 2 guys, what you're getting from an elemental perspective, the rim protection, the defensive rebounding, the physicality, I can pinpoint 100 instances where Oscar Clough's just influence around the basket has really mattered for Purdue. I can isolate a bunch of moments where defense that Purdue did not have last year in the paint has led directly to offense. I think Purdue, as I've said since April, Purdue is going to be a better transition offense team this year because they're going to get opportunities. And I think you're seeing that. I think part of that is going to unlock Braden Smith. I think a lot of that is going to unlock Fletcher Lawyer. And it is going to be linked directly to having Oscar Clough on the glass and having Daniel Jacobson blocking or at least influencing shots. But Oscar Clough gave Purdue a real spark against Oakland. I think he was kind of all over the place there in the second half. Kind of a real spark that they needed when, things were getting a little drowsy. He got a lot of garbage scoring, which is helpful. You don't necessarily need it every night, but you'll take it when you can get it. But he also just got a lot of possessions for Purdue without needing a lot of possessions, if that makes sense. Kind of a Grady Eifert sort of possessions hoarder where you make the most of what you get, but you don't need a lot run for you. You don't need a lot of touches, kind of things like that. I think when Purdue has to battle bigger people, this will show up even more because the nature of mid-major and low-major competition all the time for big schools is the other teams will be smaller than you. So those long rebounds are often difficult. Those matchups on the perimeter sometimes can be difficult. It gets a little bit easier sometimes when you start playing against traditional size. When you get into Big Ten play, things like that, you match up a little better. The matchups are a little more traditional. shall we say. And when Purdue has Trey Kaufman playing next to Oscar Clough or Daniel Jacobson, I think there's not going to be many teams that can really optimally take advantage of that size. And there's going to be a lot of matchups where Purdue can take advantage of its size. And I just think you're going to see an entirely different team in Purdue than you did last year. I think you already are. But it'll only get better from here, I think.
This game in Tuscaloosa will be a true road game, just like last year's game at Marquette was a true road game. And I went back and looked because for all the success that Purdue had in that 3-year stretch where they didn't lose to a non-conference team, I was thinking, okay, I know they went to Hartford Springfield and won a tournament. I know they went out to Maui and won a tournament, but I was trying to think, when did they go on the road and win? And I think the only true road, you could check my work on this maybe, Brian, or maybe using your memory. I think the only true road win in that entire bunch was they beat a very mediocre Florida State team in one of the last years of the ACC Big Ten Challenge in Tallahassee. My point is that these games, these early non-conference games on the road, are really difficult, especially with teams that have Alabama's firepower. I mean, this is potentially a Final Four contending. I mean, I think it is a Final Four contending team. If you're ranked in the top 10 right now, then that's exactly what you are. And this is not me trying to pre-excuse a loss, but while we all want to see where Purdue is at this point of the season, do we also have to add the caveat that while we're absorbing all of this, that guys, it's 2 full weeks before Thanksgiving. Like, we have to give some time for all these things to play out, good or bad.
Yeah, I think every team in America right now, the flavors are all still kind of finding one another. What am I saying here? I think that everybody's figuring it out. The whole recipe's coming together. I guess that's what I was trying to say. I couldn't come up with the word recipe. Alabama is still figuring things out for sure. Perhaps their win over St. John's was Alabama being that good. Maybe St. John's is screwed up. Mm-hmm. Who knows? It's not uncommon, especially now in the portal days, where teams can be a little bit dysfunctional right out of the gate, and Purdue's problems through 2 games that count probably pale in comparison to the problems a lot of other people have. But I think Alabama is always going to be athletic. They're always going to be able to shoot. They're always going to put a ton of pressure on you with their offense and things like that. But Purdue's had some success against this program, and even though their faces change every year, I think they're largely the same every year too. And Purdue hasn't won a ton of true road games through this non-conference run, but they've not played a ton of them either. That's kind of the nature of non-conference play now. Everybody wants neutral site games. They don't want to go play on somebody else's home floor. That's why it's so refreshing to see Alabama willing to come to Mackey Arena last year, and Purdue obviously to reciprocate that. It's refreshing to see Iowa State being willing to come to Mackey Arena, and then Purdue to reciprocate that. Marquette is coming to Purdue, and that series has kind of is finally petering out. When it seemed like they were playing every single year. You can't count on the Gavitt games or the ACC Big Ten Challenge anymore for that marquee road game. So you got to convince somebody to come to you if they want you to go to them. It's kind of a complicated time in scheduling right now. You kind of wish everybody would approach the way Nate Oates and Matt Painter do, and a few other coaches out there, the Tom Izzos and the Shaka Smarts and whatnot. They're willing to go play people on their home floors and understand that, hey, if we get beat, it's going to help our strength of schedule, but also make our team better down the line. But, Purdue's been pretty good in non-conference play the last couple of years. Last year was a bit of a outlier, but also directly related to the complexion of their team that had real limitations. So when you go down there and play Auburn without any real size and with their athleticism and whatnot, just the fact they were really good, you can get boat raced. But, Purdue gets to the Sweet 16 anyway at the end of the year. Perhaps playing Auburn helped them, be better later in the year, even though Purdue didn't win the Big Ten, anything like that. But it is still a good experience for these teams to play really high-end competition in non-conference play.
Yeah, I mean Alabama also has coupled the Purdue games with home and home with Illinois, and they've got like Gonzaga on there. I think they played Gonzaga like 3 or the last 4 years in a row together. So Nate Oates really goes out and challenges himself too. Wanted to end on a recruiting note. I saw this from the folks at On Three. I think it was Joe Tipton that had this article about Sinan Juan making his college choice this week, and Purdue fighting against fellow Big Teners in Illinois, who I just mentioned, in Ohio State for him. What are you hearing from that camp on that 2026 big man?
Yeah, we everything reported today, we'd already reported. It just
Gotcha.
was actually admitted to today. You know, sometimes we're ahead of things. Then have to wait for the player to make his announcement of what we already reported. So, but everything reported today that Sinan Juan is down to 3, was already on our site like last week. I think Purdue's got a really good shot there, if not going to get him. And I think that it's one of those deals where Purdue just wants to keep stacking 7-footers. It's what's worked for them. They want to keep developing high school guys. It's what's worked for them. You do run the risk here and there of being young when everyone else is old, but it's worked out for them. And you get those guys as upperclassmen, and they've gotten better because you played them when you were young, and you know it's worked out well for Purdue, and they're not going to deviate from it. And for Purdue to be able to get in on really high end, highly ranked guys, I guess that's kind of the irrelevant part of it, but it's sort of the language we speak in recruiting. For them to be able to get in on players like this relatively late in the process, and put themselves in position to get those players speaks to their reputation out there in the marketplace now. Jacob Weber, was a guy that Purdue offered relatively late compared to how Purdue has always operated in recruiting, where it's been the early offer, put a lot of time in, and then just hope everything that matters most aligns with what you do when it matters. Doesn't always work that way, but I think that Purdue was able to get Jacob Weber, offering well after a lot of other people. That's a top 40 ranked player in the country, one of the best shooters available in his class nationally, and it speaks to Purdue's cachet out there in the marketplace now that Purdue can jump into these recruitments relatively late and put themselves in position to have a chance, if not get the kid altogether. And we'll see what Sinan Juan ultimately announces, but I would feel pretty good about Purdue's chances here.
We'll keep an eye on that for later this week. You can follow Brian at Brian Newbert on X. Get his thoughts, videos, writings, and ramblings by becoming a goldenblack.com subscriber as well if you aren't already, right here at goldenblack.com. And Boilers and Crimson Tide coming up Thursday night, and what's going to be a really fun basketball matchup, which I'm sure we'll talk about coming up on future Golden Black radio shows. Thanks so much, Brian. We'll talk to you again soon.
No problem, Derek. Thanks, man.
That's Brian Newbert, columnist, goldenblack.com. And that is our show for this edition of Golden Black Radio. Thanks so much to our presenting sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors, as well as Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, 2 distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort, with thoughtfully designed accommodations and nourishing dining. Sand Valley is the place to reconnect with yourself and those you love. Find your winter retreat at sandvalley.com. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And don't forget, of course, hit the like and subscribe button. And you can leave a positive review. We would really appreciate a 5-star review. If you feel like this show is 5 stars, that's awesome. We don't want to force you to do that, but if you could take it out of the goodness of your heart to do that, it would mean a lot to us. And leave a nice comment. We'd really appreciate it. And don't forget to enable alerts as well. We upload new content just about every day on all of our channels here at Golden Black. So have those alerts. And then if you're a Boiler fan, you get pinged and you know when something is fresh, new, hot out the kitchen, hot out the oven for you when it comes to Purdue men's basketball and Purdue football. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to goldenblack.com? If you aren't already, join the biggest Purdue community on the internet. We still have our special promo code running, PU1. Use code PU1 at checkout when you buy that subscription and get your first 2 months of your monthly subscription to goldenblack.com for just $1. That promo code, again, PU1, to join the biggest Purdue community on the internet. Thanks to our guests today. Thanks to Tom. Thanks to Dub. Thanks to Brian. Thanks to you for tuning us in. We'll be back with you Friday to preview the game against Washington, the final road trip of the season for the Boilers. And I'm sure we'll have plenty to say about the Alabama game as well, the first true test for the men's basketball squad as Matt Painter's team takes in their third game of the 25-26 season. But until next time, I'm Derek Schultz. I hope you enjoyed it. This has been Gold and Black Radio here on goldenblack.com.